Alright, everyone, welcome back. We are discussing the E3 conferences and everything the companies have been dropping, the things we've been interested in, all that jazz. And now we are jumping into the first of the quote unquote big three, as some people say. Let's discuss Sony.
Why'd you have to say Sony that way?
Yeah.
I'm contractually obligated to say it like that.
Oh, okay.
By myself,
Makes
I just contractually
makes sense to
obligated
me.
myself.
Man,
Okay.
those contracts, they're always in there.
I believe it.
Okay, okay. So disclaimer: at the very minimum, Joe and I aren't like big Sony people. We've done Xbox for a long time, and for the most part, it's been just not wanting to throw down money on an extra console or whatever is on a different console and so on. So we're a little bit divorced from the Sony, but we're also gamers and we get excited about things. So we will try and remain as positive as possible, even though Sony's made some decisions that we're not super happy with from time to time.
They will contain themselves, is what he's trying
Right.
to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that said, I think we should probably start with the biggest announcement of the entire thing, and game of the show contender, and that's the Final Fantasy 15 Monster of the Deep promo.
You totally threw me off there because I was not expecting that one. I was going to say something
gonna-
else, but
We're
okay.
gonna start it with a bang. We're gonna start
So
with a
we're-
bang. So yeah, weigh
you're
in.
you're killing me. You're killing me.
Only
My
do more
franchise.
fishing times.
You're killing me. My franchise is slowly dying. What has it become? But yes, it was during the portion of the PlayStation VR experience, and it was showing, some games.
Yeah.
They showed some Skyrim, and they showed some this horror game, and they showed some other games. But the one that caught my eye naturally is because I'm a big Final Fantasy fan, particularly the older series. But it's still a big name to me, and I'm still always interested in seeing what they do. And last year at E3, Sony announced that they were going to have a PlayStation VR experience for Final Fantasy 15. And naturally, some people got excited, and they showed a little bit of it, and it was actually combat based. So we thought, okay, this could be actually okay, for a VR experience. And
Yeah.
so fast forward a year, and during the montage.
Wait. We've just fast forwarded a year.
Okay, there we go.
You're
So we're
welcome.
in present
You're welcome.
time now.
You're welcome.
Much appreciated.
Yeah.
VHSs are still alive.
Right. In my heart.
Yeah. And we don't get that combat-based kind of trailer that we've seen from last year. Instead, Square Enix decided to go the route of some intense fishing. That's right.
Yeah.
You can use the characters from Final Fantasy 15 to do some fishing. And what I thought was one of the funniest things about that was that the music in the background was like this super heavy metal music
Yeah.
to accompany what I guess was supposed to be intense fishing experience. So
Right.
they had this like
Get
heavy metal
hyped.
music, right? And all it showcased is, well, what you would expect, a first-person perspective of fishing.
Right.
That's what they've. That's the PlayStation VR experience for the Final Fantasy series in general. So
Yeah, the fascinating thing to me about it too was you'd think, especially given the name of it, the Monster of the Deep,
yeah,
and the genre and the game, channel that it's stemming from, you'd have like some crazy fish. They'd show you like the craziest fish that you've ever seen, and
Right.
he pulls up this fish that he's fought so hard for, and it's a fairly typical striped bass.
Yeah.
I didn't even know they had striped bass in Final Fantasy, but they did have a fully featured like food system, so it grounded in reality. You don't want to eat completely weird things. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's some fun.
I mean, I understand it's supposed to be a VR experience, but I don't know what to say. I've been fairly critical of Square Enix and Final Fantasy in particular, and what they've done over the years with that series. The only one, but it just boggles my mind that like this big VR experience from this title, and they decide to choose fishing. It's just I don't know. They could have done so
I
much
don't know.
more.
I don't know about you. I mean, to me, my brain immediately jumps to fishing as the perfect VR experience. But I mean, you don't have to do anything super active. You can just sit comfortably. I mean, that highlights all of the main abilities of VR right there, is sitting comfortably, right?
Right. But they could go ahead and do that themselves, but they don't have to bring the Final Fantasy name involved. Like, they could do...
Why besmirch the name Final Fantasy?
Unbelievable.
You sure are besmirching.
Was that something that you could do in the regular game? Was there a fishing element, or?
You know what? I
think there is various harvesting methods in it, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was funny too, because after that off, they cut to the crowd, and they were bewildered, like I was, that they just seen a Final Fantasy 15 VR experience. And all they came up with was fishing. Like, they were bewildered. I felt them. They felt me. We had the same thing. It's just crazy, but I wanted to get that off my chest because again, that series is really. I'm really passionate about that series, particularly the older stuff, and yeah.
Well, maybe that was the true power of VR there. You both felt the bewilderment together.
Yeah, it's true.
If they were going for that, they succeeded for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and I've obviously kind of taken the opportunity after doing my long spiel about trying to be even and balanced to take a little bit of a bite out of Sony there, but I did feel like it illustrated something about the conference in general that was interesting. That from everything that I've heard, that same conference that we saw all the footage of was about twice as long as what we saw. And so they had the opportunity to edit things around and make it look as favorable as possible. Again, from what I understand, I was not there. And that's what ended up dumbfounding me about moments like that, is I would have thought that they'd take that ability to edit the best parts and maybe make it look like people were jazzed a little bit more when stuff like that happened. But over and over again, it seemed like there was a lackluster show of support from the fans and the audience when they'd cut to them. Now, everything that I've heard from the actual event, apparently it wasn't like that at all. Like, the people that were there, it sounded like there was tales of brotherly Sony love, and everybody was joyous and fondly enjoying everything about the conference. But yeah, it didn't come across that way to the video viewers.
Absolutely not.
So it took a decent chunk of the energy out of it. I feel, and I don't think I'm the. I don't think even though a lot of the people were there, the people that went back and watched the show later, that was their only experience. It sounds like that's kind of a universal thing, that it felt a lot less energetic than people expected it to be. But that said, they had a lot of stuff that should have produced a lot of energy and some really impressive things. So we'll jump into one of those impressive things. And maybe one of the smaller ones, but everybody seemed to universally like this, is the possibly indie game Moss, also in the VR genre. So what were your guys' feelings on that one?
Yeah, I thought I was like bummed in the sense of like, oh man, this is on PlayStation VR. Like I won't probably ever be able to play it because
like
it would
2
require me to
layers.
buy PlayStation 4 and a PlayStation 4 VR, which like I mean perhaps a PlayStation 4 at some point, but a VR was never really on the radar. Now it's like, oh man, but yeah, this looked really neat, and just the stuff I heard kind of from others after kind of being able to play it and stuff of it, mentioning things like the character kind of like helping you, like you're kind of guiding it through the levels and stuff, but if you get kind of stuck on some of the puzzles, like the mouse will actually sort of like point or like kind of help you, like hey, maybe you should maybe you should try that or kind of thing. But it was just it was neat, like this just the art style of it and everything, of just like you it sounded like they built a good relationship between the player and the character, and you want to help the mouse out, and building upon that, and just like I was both like, oh sweet, like I hope people play this and it gets tons of support, and then on the flip side I'm like, damn it, I want to be able to play this game.
Yeah, it has a super cool aesthetic to it, and the mouse is cute as all get out.
Yeah, very adorable.
She's adorable.
Yeah, initially when I saw it, and before I saw a title, I thought it was a game of like the exploits of the mouse from Lion Witch and the Wardrobe. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, I could get into that.
Oh, okay.
And so now I kind of want that game, but yeah, this looked really cool. Any thoughts, Kain? Do you want to come in and demolish it now?
No, pretty much everything, I feel the same way. Everything was said on it. It looked really cool, but being on the VR kind of hinders it for me because, again, like Jaco, if you're going to get a PlayStation 4, then you got to get a VR as well, and that's it's not cheap. So I wonder maybe sometime down the line they could release it without the VR experience, maybe. I don't know, but that'd be cool.
Yeah, it seems interesting. They're stuck, best I can tell, in an interesting place with the VR stuff, because they, even with PS4 Pro, they can't get a super high amount of fidelity crammed into dual screens to convey the 3D environment through a VR set. And they can still pull off really good artistic stuff, but it automatically puts it in more of the indie space for the most part. And that ends up becoming a problem in what we're kind of highlighting is people like us. If we want to jump in and play these games, shelling out that much money for it is kind of a big obstacle, even if you're part of the absolutely massive install base for PlayStation 4 in general. it adding that extra layer to it to play a game that will probably end up heavily discounted pretty quickly. It's a little bit disappointing, or it can be.
Yeah. I just hope one day that they could release that without the VR capabilities, and because that would definitely be something I would be into if it was just on the console itself and you didn't need the VR for it.
Do you feel the same way about
Yeah.
the Final Fantasy Monster of the Deep? With that?
It does absolutely nothing for me. VR, no
okay.
VR.
I thought this was our opportunity to sway Sony, get them on the right track. But yeah, I'm still really interested in their VR stuff in general, and I have high hopes for it because it still is at this point the most comfortable VR headset out there from everybody's account. So if they can nail it down and get people sold on it, that would be really awesome. I'd
Yeah.
like to feel
Yeah.
like it's worth shelling out that amount of money to be more than just the leading edge of a movement, of the next jump in a video game hierarchy.
I think their biggest app for the VR is still Resident Evil 7. That one sold really well.
Yeah.
But
and
they
impressive
definitely,
by all accounts.
Yeah, it was well done. I watched a certain streamer go through the whole game in VR, and it was really fun. I could imagine just him being in that situation because you got to get your eyes adjusted. You've got to get in that scenario. In Resident Evil 7, it's a pretty damn creepy game. Never mind in VR. So you feel like really immersed in that scenario. So we definitely like the hardware, the VR itself. It's just waiting for that a handful of killer apps to come to that, and then to kind of warrant that high price.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get something to get excited about that. The stuff that I'm looking at right now as far as other highlights, it doesn't look like there's anything that really presses that, but I guess we'll move on to kind of the next big flagship thing for Sony, or at least they seem to be trying to push it that way, is the Days Gone video game. It had a decent last year, and it was fairly impressive seeing that amount of humanity, or lack thereof, moving at a fevered pace towards somebody with just a single rifle. So it was pretty effective the last time around, but I don't know if everybody felt like it was as effective when they were trying to sell it this time around. What were your guys' thoughts?
For me, being that survival horror guy, I don't know. I don't think it did this video anyways that we seen at this press conference. I don't think it did a whole lot for me. I mean, it was cool to see the character kind of like bait other guys and have the horde kind of chase them down, but I don't know. The bear trap, for instance, was it was interesting, the stealth aspect of it. Like he picked up the bear trap and he kind of placed it in like a semi closed off area. I mean, and he chucked a rock at the area so the guys would go over there, and the guy just kind of walked right into the trap. I don't know if that was the best example to use. Like, I felt that they could have hit it better. So the guy kind of just walked into a bear. Oh, the bear trap! Ah, and then everyone kind of runs over, and then they kind of take off. So I think the game has potential. I just don't feel they really showed off what it could do in that presentation that I seen of it.
Yeah, I think For me, probably the most interesting aspect right now is just like the setting. Like it's
Hmm.
neat to see like forest stuff and like a group of
Yeah.
people. It's a different take. Like I don't know if they're all bikers and stuff, but it's different than just like a dilapidated city or something. Or
Mm.
so that like that
Yeah.
aspect was kind of neat. But yeah, I don't know like if the game is like just what the whole game itself is going to be, or just yeah, it just seemed like here's a pretty game, but is there any actual substance to it? Or
We will find out as soon as
Yeah.
no.
possible.
It
Um,
certainly has potential, that's for sure.
yeah, I have high hopes for it. I really enjoy the look and feel of it, and it has an extra layer of fun to me. And I'm guessing that it kind of plays on Django a lot the same way, is that since we have these same sort of like impressive hilly forests in our area, and it's kind of a chunk of our childhood that we're used to. It feels a lot closer to home, sort of seeing a lot of these
Mhm.
scenarios in these kind of hidden little valleys, surrounded by crazy tall trees and so on. So it it kind of tugs at those heartstrings a little bit for me. So I'm interested to see where it goes from here. But I haven't been super impressed by the presentation of it so far. Um, but yeah, we'll try and move to something that the presentation was far more impressive, and that
I,
is the possible full remake of Shadow of the Colossus. Have either of you guys
yes.
played the original game, or?
Uh, it was on the PlayStation 2. Yeah, I played a little bit of it. I never completed it by any means, and I haven't played it in probably 10 years. So I'm a
Hmm.
little bit fuzzy for the most part, but I do remember when I did play it, I did enjoy it. And I've seen some graphical comparisons between like, this remake and what it was, and it looks impressive.
Yeah.
Because this was a highly critical commercial success. This game when it came out. So definitely from what I see, and kudos to them as far as the graphical standpoint goes, because the game itself was fluid. Its controls were good. The story seemed interesting. So now they brought it into like the modern times, I
Hmm.
quote unquote. So I this would probably be a game that I would buy if I had a PlayStation 4. I know it's like, a remake or whatever, but no, I
Right.
it looked pretty good from what I've seen.
Yeah, visually it looks really neat to me, and since I don't have any connection to the original game, it was impressive to me seeing these giant creatures and the environment that they live in, and the character trying to either evade them or climb them or whatnot. It was all really impressive. The thing that I was kind of surprised once I'd seen that, because I was pretty impressed by it, was that I guess a lot of fans of the original, and actually of the last remaster, I guess, versus this time apparently remake. Um,
Yeah,
the the visuals on those two previous versions or incarnations, they had a much different feel to them. They had a much more washed out feel as far as I think the original game. It just came down to not being able to render those environments without having massive fog effects. But it ended up pulling off an aesthetic that looked really impressive. And so when they made the remaster, they incorporated that, except in a much more fleshed out way. So it could, the machine did have the heavy lifting power to pull it off, but it still had that kind of isolated, washed out look of being dense fog all over the place. And now that I've seen comparisons to that, the old version is impressive in its own way, and I can understand how that would be really immersive, like feeling like you were keyed in on specific things because everything else is kind of hazy. So
Yeah.
I have kind of mixed feelings on it after that, but I know initially it was super impressive seeing all these creatures and the level of detail in the arenas that you were trying to either evade them or fight them in. So I think for most people it's going to be a very positive experience.
Yeah, I mean they remade the game's assets from the ground up, and just kept the gameplay. So for old games like that, it's good. The gameplay was never an issue for that game. So the fact that they can just upgrade the graphics and still bring this quote unquote masterpiece to the PlayStation 4 that's a pretty big deal for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I know there's quite a few fans out there of that game, and some people that have never played it before, so gives them an opportunity.
Yeah, and my understanding of it is that it wasn't the biggest financial success in the world, but it's one of the biggest critical successes of video games in general. So yeah, if it can get out there to more people, more power to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So another one that I didn't get a chance to see, but I understand that you saw, Kain, was the Marvel vs. Capcom reveal of the story. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes. So we have that game coming out on September of this year, September 19th.
Yeah.
And
not October?
I know, right? Shocking. We have to
It's too
sort
early.
of pace ourselves.
It's too early.
Yeah. It is. That's the downfall right there. It's released September.
Right. Well, they've got room to delay. They've got room to delay.
Right.
A fighting game term, so
Yep.
works perfectly.
Yeah, well, I'll start with what I did like with the game, and when it was revealed, I kind of like those. They don't do them so much anymore at E3, but I kind of like those reveals of a game, and then when they're done, at the end it says, download now, try the demo, or try this. I really like that for any kind of game.
Touch.
That's something they don't do. Yeah, they don't do it a lot anymore, but it was really nice to see, okay, cool, this is hype, and now we can go try the story mode. So that's something I definitely appreciated as far as that reveal goes. I think kind of the problem with this game is that Microsoft had revealed the Dragon Ball Z Fighters, and I think it's getting the two of them, as far as visually goes, the two of them have been getting a lot of comparisons because they also are both like tag systems as well. And I think after seeing the Dragon Ball game and then going into this one, I think that hurt it a lot. Like when you seen the trailer of Chun-Li, she looked extremely frightening. Like, I don't know what, her eyebrows were like barely there. Her makeup was... She just did not look impressive at all. Not something that you're used to seeing from Capcom. So I don't know what's up with that. Another thing
I'd heard people speculate on, as far as that goes, that Sony might have put a little bit of pressure to have it be put into the spotlight a little bit sooner than it should be. Because apparently the visuals on those games end up developing really fast near the end of the game, because the meat and potatoes of those games is, of course, the system itself, like how it actually plays, and that's like a crazy amount of work on those games. So hopefully it'll literally be a like day one patch and everything will be beautiful. hopefully.
Yeah. Um, I'm still sort of interested in it. I'm not like a huge Marvel fan. I used to play them in the arcades and the Dreamcast, but it was never like one of my like favorite or top three favorite fighters or anything. So I'm still like cautiously optimistic about this game. Another issue I have with it, and I know I'm not alone, but is actually the roster itself. I feel that
Mm.
both on the Marvel side and the Capcom side could have used a few other characters, especially ones that were already previously in it, like the omission of Wolverine and Spider-Man for Marvel. I'm kind of a
Yeah.
little upset about because I like both of those characters a lot. So that I think hurts it. And then on the Capcom side, they took out Wesker from the Resident Evil series, which I thought
Oh,
Mm.
was
really?
a nice
Okay.
addition. Yeah, they don't have Wesker there. And there was a couple other characters that I would have liked to see in the game from the Capcom side that I don't know if anyone's even thought about. But Beautiful
Lay it on
Joe,
us.
I don't know if you're familiar with
Yeah.
that series. It was on the GameCube,
Mm.
Beautiful Joe. I thought that character would be an awesome addition because he already kind of fits that aesthetic. He's in like superhero outfit, and I think it would be a nice addition to that for the Capcom side. And also, this might be a little more niche, but a couple characters from the Breath of Fire franchise. I'm going back to the Super Nintendo days now. I don't know how familiar you guys are with
Right.
that, but
Yeah.
it's an RPG from Capcom, very reminiscent to the Final Fantasy series. And there's a couple characters I think it would be cool to introduce kind of like this fantasy themed character with either like a bow or a sword that could also use magic powers because
Mm.
that's kind of what those characters were using in that RPG. So I think that would actually
Oh,
be
okay.
it would kind of fit with some of the Marvel characters because they have like the powers and stuff like that. Uh,
Right.
I might be scraping the bottom of the barrel with that, but I think yeah, Beautiful Joe and a character or two from Breath of Fire would be cool, and then of course Wesker and Wolverine, Spider-Man not being in it, that kind of hurts it for me because like those would have been like my crew probably. Honestly,
Yeah.
it probably would have
Yeah.
been. So
Beautiful Joe, along with all of the film side effects, was really cool in previous games. So it is surprising that it's not in there.
yeah,
Yeah. From what I understand, a lot of it was just outright financials, since Capcom has been perpetually in hard times for a long time now, and they had a really hard time getting the last Street Fighter together, and it took a major injection of money from PlayStation or from Sony, and it's basically why that game got made at all. And it created the problem that I've had with Sony in the past, is that now, because I'm like Xbox, I can't play a Street Fighter game, and I'm a reasonably big fighter fan, even though I'm not a big Street Fighter guy. It ends up kind of
yeah,
souring me on them to a certain extent. But I get it. I understand why they made that choice. And from what I understand, they made a similar thing with Marvel, and that's why it created all of these problems with bringing back the old characters. Because by teaming up with Marvel to make this game, they have access to the current MCU list of characters, because Marvel obviously wants to push them a lot harder, so that they can keep people in their own like money base. And so reaching out to other owners of the the previous characters was out of their price range, from what I understand. And again, I wasn't in the boardroom for any of this stuff, so who knows how much of this is complete hearsay or whatnot. But it makes a lot of sense, and it jives with what we're seeing right now with this cast of characters. But it does allow them to do some characters that I'm kind of more interested in, especially with upcoming Marvel movies. And since I am a big Marvel movie fan, Um, like I was really looking forward to Captain Marvel as like a flagship character. That sounds really cool to me. I've been kind of brushing up on what her character is like because I'm interested to see what they're building on for the movies and seeing what direction they're going to go for. But I'm sure if you're a fan of fighting stuff in general and those characters, you probably would have seen a they just released a death battle from Screw Attack of kind of an interesting thing, an interesting pair up considering what you brought up earlier about the Dragon Ball game, is that it's Android 18 versus Captain Marvel. So effectively, it's like flagship characters of both of these games squaring off against each other.
Yeah.
And I was surprised to see in that, maybe spoiler, but hopefully people have seen it by now. The Android 18 does pretty well in that fight, and I think if it's Marvel versus Capcom versus this new Dragon Ball Z game, it's probably going to end up kind of similar from what we're seeing so far. But we'll talk more about the Dragon Ball game later.
Yeah, definitely.
The next thing that was a big reveal and people were really thrown off by and trying to figure out through nearly the entire promo for it was Monster Hunter World.
Yes.
I'm actually really interested in this. It's not an exclusive, but it was their reveal, so that was pretty cool. But it seems to be trying to take everything that people like about Monster Hunter and hopefully people that had the fan base expanded off of the newest Zelda game, incorporating so many things off of the new Monster Hunter, and combining kind of a pseudo massive multiplayer experience to it. So it looks like it might be somewhere along the lines of a Destiny, except set in a Monster Hunter world. And that's pretty compelling to me. It looks pretty neat. The aesthetic looks really nice. All of the visuals were nailed down pretty well, and it looked like it would be genuinely fun to try and take on these crazy creatures with a group of friends.
Yeah, that T-Rex with that nose there, that was crazy.
Yeah.
Just seeing him sniff around and then all of a sudden just growing that on the top, and like, whoa, what the heck are we dealing with now? That's no ordinary T-Rex. Yeah, that was really neat.
Yeah, they did a really good job of that, and just the crazy setting for that game too, with all of the insane weapons that you end up getting from this, all of the monster hunting missions that you can do. It looks really neat. The crazy sword on the main character's back looked really cool. So yeah, I'm hyped for that. So good job getting the reveal on that, Sony. Good job.
Oh, there you go. Sony, damn, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not
High
the only
praise.
one that they can convince. It can get other people too.
Right.
Nice. Yeah, I feel the same way. Maybe to a little lesser extent, but I definitely have my eyes on it. I think it could be really fun. The whole the online co-op situation it would definitely appeal to me.
Yeah, I loved seeing the firing off the flare and seeing people come rocketing in on pterodactyl creatures. That looked pretty neat to me. I'm a sucker for whenever they can incorporate a drop-in system and have it look like it's fully incorporated into the game. I'm sure we're all used to any sort of multiplayer game where somebody just pops in, but it's so much more fun to see somebody like fly in on a rocket or drop in off of a pterodactyl. It's something that made me instantly fall in love with certain levels on the old Battlefield series, Battlefield 2142. And anytime they've pulled it off ever since has been a big bonus point for me. So hopefully that's like fully integrated and not just for showsies.
Well, I do know they have the grappling hook system, and that's something that I've always enjoyed in games like that, is being able to hook over to higher elevations, or just hook onto like a big monster and get on top of its back or whatnot. So I definitely like that idea with the grappling hook and being able to take on these monsters with hooking on to, probably most things. Most things I'm sure interactable. So I definitely like that appeal.
And it was a really well executed ad also, just from the standpoint of you went through all this stuff, like walking through the forest, planting all of these traps for this thing, and you don't even know what he's doing until he manages to get on the wrong side of this thing and get it chasing after him to trigger all of this stuff. And so you're seeing kind of the plans within plans for the character unfold, and that was impressive enough. But then to have like the final thing be that effectively that was just the bait for some other creature, that was a really cool moment. I really enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, I think the video that they showed was well done, and I definitely look forward to seeing more on that, especially like gameplay, true gameplay and everything, like a nice demonstration of it. That'd be cool.
So that was definitely a high point. So we'll jump into arguably the highest point for a lot of people. The new Dad of War game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. This game to me is a system seller. This was
it sure looks
impressive. Damn impressive. I'm really close to getting a PlayStation just for Dad of War now. I mean, there's obviously other games I'd be interested in too, but this one looks quite impressive. I know we've mentioned.
I suppose we
before,
should elaborate for people not in the know that it is not actually Dad of War. It is God of War, but now he's dad. So
what? Dang it.
Just so you know.
Just to make absolutely sure. I'm going through all these lists. I can't find this Dad of War anyplace.
Yeah, what is this? What?
It's like, what? Dad of War?
Right.
It keeps telling me, did you mean God of War? But no, I'm searching Dad.
Right. No, Siri, stop.
But, it got the loudest pop in the conference, and I believe rightfully so. It was, to me, hands down the most impressive game as far as visuals, combat, story. I like the fact that they've moved away from Greek mythology now, and they've brought in some Norse mythology into it, so it's kind of like mixing it up a little bit, because maybe to some people the series might have been getting stale to some, who knows, but now it is quite different, with Kratos now kind of being like that mentor to his son, and Kratos being a demigod. It makes things quite interesting because he's trying to control his rage, and that's something that Kratos doesn't do very well.
Right.
So it's quite interesting.
It's kind of his thing, not controlling his rage.
Right.
Yeah.
The combat looked brutal as it should.
Yeah.
With that shield that he had, and then that kind of it was almost like a frost axe that he had that kind of had like a boomerang effect. He could bring it back whenever he wanted, and just splitting people apart. And oh man, it looked really cool viscerally. Oh man. And I don't know if you guys know, this is maybe a did you know, but did you guys recognize the voice actor, the new voice actor for Kratos? Did you guys happen? No? Okay. Well, if you're a fan of a sci-fi TV series called Stargate SG-1, you would know that this is
Oh,
Christopher Judge Teal'c from SG-1
Oh,
voicing
wow.
Kratos.
oh,
Yeah,
damn.
I know, right? That's
Heck.
bringing out my inner nerdum there, I guess. But
Yeah,
I kind of like
that
SG-1. But yeah,
this is
that's
probably something that's said too often, but I think that qualifies as a deep cut.
so I thought that was cool. Because they have to have a new voice character for this Kratos because Sony said they're outright going in a different direction for this series
Yeah.
now. It's kind of like a soft reboot. It's a sequel to 3, but it's still kind of a soft reboot. So they wanted to go in a different direction with Kratos, so they went and got a new voice actor. And so far, it everything I've seen was hands down, I think, the most impressive for Sony was this game right here. So I
Yeah.
don't know how you guys felt, but
Well,
yeah, if
you'd mentioned the combat, and to me, the first thing that jumps to my brain as far as the combat is actually that is something that we've mentioned earlier is sort of being a failure, but did really well in certain aspects is the For Honor game. I think that game, best I can tell, proved really well that as far as a melee system, an over the shoulder can be absolute gold.
hmm
And I've seen people complain about trying to do that with this game, and it's like I don't know. Makes sense to me. The evidence is out there, and it looks really fluid. So it seems like the proof is in the pudding already. But
yeah,
what got me probably the most was between the last trailer and this trailer. I was it looked really cool to me in the last trailer, and it looked like it should have some fun bits, but I was genuinely afraid of having to deal with the sun over the course of an entire game. Um, just
hmm
because a lot of games, sort of the worst parts of them, is trying to protect some useless person and hold their hand through whatever crap scenario.
Mhm.
And
yeah,
so I was really afraid of that in this, but this trailer definitely sold me on that because I really loved when he's climbing the cliff face and
mm,
calls to the kid to try and take out an enemy, and kid like handily just bloop
yeah,
knife
just
like
boom.
right in its face. Done.
Yeah,
So the kid has
yeah,
some skills of his own, and that should be pretty cool. But what absolutely sold me on it was sort of the ending part where they have the world
yes,
serpent pop up. And
yeah,
number one, they had it like perfectly cool off of the thing that you'd mentioned before with the sort of boomerang mechanic off of that frost axe. That's really
yeah,
cool in general. And so having him not be able to throw that axe back to him, which again is sort of funny that they did. Um, was sort of a neat little touch. And so when the axe comes back, and it's this big crazy strong thing, and the first thing that's going through your mind with it being through the view of a God of War game is that, oh, this is going to be a gigantic like quick time event where he scrambles up it and like plucks out its eyes or something crazy. This is going to be great. And then it turns
yeah,
out the kid outright has a conversation with it, and
uh-huh,
that ended up being much more satisfying than any amount of combat with that, to me personally, just because it adds a ton of layers of stuff. Because if you're
yeah,
not familiar, the world serpent is like a key part of the beginning of Ragnarok, and that definitely seems to be a theme in this, is the falling of the gods, which is a theme in these games in general. So if they're hinting that the world serpent is trying to get Kratos to be like the start of Ragnarok, that's a pretty good way to get people hooked on it, and it it's nice to have it not thrown directly in your face too. If having like people who are just familiar with it or getting information off of other people, like connecting the dots, it makes it a lot more
research
fun.
even. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so yeah, it's super impressive to me. Um, Joe, what do you hate
Yeah,
about it?
it's no. I would say what's neat too is it gives that kid like another aspect of being useful. Like
Yeah,
apparently this kid can understand like these gods or these creatures, so I'm
Yeah.
sure he's gonna play a part in that as you're progressing through the game too. So
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm looking forward to seeing more about it. And it's like you, Kane. It's a very tempting system seller to me
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
a
yeah,
console that's already done insanely well. So I imagine it's gonna help the console quite a bit, just single handedly.
Yeah. They they left that video on like a perfect note with that the hint of Ragnarok, and then that's it. And then we also kind of seen what appeared to be Kratos' wife as well, talking to
Yeah,
him throughout the trailer. So I thought that was a nice touch too. It really it feels like it's really story driven, and it's not just hack and slash, get through God, move on to the next God sort of thing.
yeah,
It definitely seems like there's a lot of layers to this game between the son, the wife, the Ragnarok implications and everything, and just a different take on Kratos with him trying to suppress the rage. So
yeah.
yeah,
It's
kudos to
it's
them.
neat seeing, yeah, it's neat seeing them go a different direction than just um, the Greek version of the Hulk in a weird sort of way.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it
yeah.
should be fun. Um, let's see. I mean, as far as I know, we're into the end of the list for Sony stuff. There was one last
We ha-
big thing,
we have one more to talk about for Sony, and it was the
and
last video they showed in the press conference as well.
yeah, yeah, and it was super impressive for a lot of people. Um, and it's something that people have been looking forward to because it's from a very big developer who's done a lot of real satisfying games. Insomniac,
Yep.
correct? Or
Yep.
so
Yeah.
Insomniac. Yep.
they managed to get the Spider-Man IP for that game, which is again a little bit ironic when you relate it to the Capcom thing we mentioned earlier. But
Hmm.
the game
Yeah.
looks pretty solid. It looks like it's incorporated a lot of the best things about QuickTime events and sort of a Arkham Asylum feel to it, along with the outright like freewheeling joy of a Spider-Man character. So it looks pretty impressive. What are your guys' thoughts on it?
Um, I think that they did the Spider-Man character quite well. I like when he was, kind of sitting there saving people, because that's what Spider-Man does. He saves people. Like even the
Mhm.
Yeah,
enemies, he would when he launched at the plane, he instead of taking the guy that had the rocket out, he decided to swing him over to the building so he wouldn't
yeah,
die. And I liked the moments where he's going out of his way to save the people of New York. He's when debris is falling, he's kind of shooting his web to save it, and he's sitting there like kind of talking to himself. He's like, no, 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 or oh, I got you, I got it. It
yeah,
to me it
Yeah.
felt like a Spider-Man character. That's something he would completely do. I agree. Like the Arkham Knight combat kind of has that feel to it. The QTEs is very cinematic, very much like the movies have been.
hmm
So that's kind of cool. It got my adrenaline going actually through some of those when some of the buildings started going down, and he was kind of like wrapping
Oh yeah,
himself around and going up and running along, and then that was quite impressive. I thought it looked phenomenal, and of course Insomniac is used to those kind of things, especially with Sunset Overdrive. They
yeah,
they're actually
Yeah.
using a a system implemented from Sunset Overdrive. It's just an upgraded system, and I noticed it right away. I'm sure you guys did too, or Django for sure. But it feels very much like a Sunset Overdrive where you're rewarded by staying in the air as much as possible and not touching the ground. And that was something that was key in Sunset Overdrive. And with Spider-Man being able to shoot his web, that is again something that he kind of stays off the ground for the most part.
Yeah.
So it definitely did feel like it was like an upgraded system from Sunset Overdrive. And I'm not sure if you guys are well versed in the Spider-Man series or not, but the main villain is Mr. Negative. If I don't know if you're familiar with him, but the guy that was
It's a
in the
heck of a
plane
name,
that,
but no. Yeah.
yeah, he Spider-Man is probably one of my favorite comic series, so I guess
Okay.
I'm fairly well versed in it. But yeah, the guy that was like the Asian guy that was in the plane and he was kind of taking control of
Right.
everything, and Spider-Man fights him and everything. Yeah, that guy's his name is Mr. Negative. So he's a
Yeah.
fairly new character. So maybe that's why maybe
Yeah.
you guys haven't heard of him, but
I don't know anything about the character, but I definitely liked that from what you could tell from the conversation that Spider-Man was having with all of these enemies, including him. It sounded like he has some sort of connection to him that makes him want to save him, even though he's not
yes.
necessarily a good
Yeah.
guy. So that was an interesting edge to it also. It was pretty cool.
Sort of like
Yeah.
a quick backstory. He used to work at like a food shelter for the less unfortunate with Aunt May. She used to volunteer there too, and
Uh-huh.
that's what he did. And then eventually, long story short, things happened, and his alter ego came out, which is Mr. Negative, and that's why Spidey's kind of like, oh, you're too good for this. You're better than this, and blah 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 blah, because he
Right.
is actually a good person, but this negativity is coming out of him, and that's kind of why he's like trying to save him. So
So like an energy-based Jekyll and Hyde sort of scenario is what
Yeah.
I'd gather. Okay.
yeah, it's
Sounds
pretty
neat.
accurate. And I also
Yeah,
want to
it-
point out I like seeing Kingpin as well. It was nice
Yeah,
seeing
I was
him
gonna
on
say
the
that.
phone.
Yeah, it was so neat.
That was pretty cool.
Especially after so many people got pretty well keyed into the Kingpin in the Netflix series of the Daredevil.
Daredevil.
I
Yeah.
I think having him be like sort of an ally of Spider-Man is going to be really interesting. Because I mean,
Yeah.
obviously they aren't necessarily the best allies, so it should be fun. I like the last little teaser, and I'm interested to see what, if anything, they're going to do with it. Is having in the crowd of people all excited by Spider-Man saving everybody, effectively the newest Spider-Man that's generated a lot of positive buzz, and there was a big campaign for having him be the main Spider-Man in the next movie and everything. And effectively, a sidekick is the new sidekick in the new movie, even though that character isn't the new Spider-Man. So it's neat seeing him in there, and I'm interested to see what, if anything, they do with that character. It seems like they're setting up some sort of significant thing. That should be cool.
Yeah, it sure looked that way. The other thing I wanted to quickly touch up on with when I was relating to, it feels like, an Insomniac game in particular, their last entry in Sunset Overdrive, is that it seemed like darn near everything was interactable for Spider-Man. Like you could pull a bar down, you could shoot here, you could jump up here, you could, it just seemed like darn near everything is interactable in some way. So I definitely felt like, oh yeah, that Sunset Overdrive a little bit there. So,
Yeah.
but what did you think of it, Django?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I can really add much new. I would say if God of War might be, at least for me, a little more of a system seller, but like if I owned a PS4, I would definitely probably get Spider-Man. It looked
Yeah,
solid, looked fun to play, and I like Insomniac, so
yep, they have a good name for sure. So yeah, I again, yeah, if I was to get a PS4, God of War, Spider-Man, right there, right off the bat from this press conference alone. So kudos to them
Yeah.
for sure. It looked impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. Their their presentation in general for the Sony presentation was a little bit lackluster overall, but yeah, they have really good exclusives that remains that way, and it's gonna keep them going for a fair amount of time.
Yeah,
yeah, that'll do it for Sony. Let's move on to the next one.